Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. It is once again a very dark and very early Wednesday morning. My window confirms it, and so I always forget that Brittany's got a window right in her shot, and you can also see there, it is very dark. And once again, my friend Britt is back with us. Britt, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. As we did last week, we're gonna do a little spoiler talk right at the top, and then we're gonna check out the new episode. So why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive into what we missed last week from Obi Wan Kenobi, which of course was episode 3. And I gotta tell you, talking about episodes 1 and 2 for like 15, 20 minutes last week, I think helped because I don't think we really missed too much. Now, granted, the majority of the episode is really driven by Obi-Wan and Vader, which is pretty much all we talked about. But at least for me on the second watch, one of the things that I dug about the show that I think we kind of hit when we were watching, but not so much after, is seeing the influence of the Empire. Like, it's one of those things where, like, we've always seen it, way after all these things have happened. It's been 20 plus years almost since the fall of the Jedi and stuff like that. And I thought it was really interesting, one, to be on like one of these outer rim planets and you have someone like Frick, right? Was that his name?
Mm-hmm. Correct,
Yeah. Which, by the way, Zach Braff, you mentioned that's what came up in the credits, and like funny little spot to put him. I did see, because I follow Christian Karloff because I love all his Star Wars stuff. He did mention something that I was like, you know what? It's not a bad point, and I never really think about it in the moment, but I always think about it after. Is like, costumed alien characters, it is kind of weird when they don't speak a foreign alien language. You know what I mean? Like, it obviously didn't take either of us out of the episode, but when I was listening to Harloff, I was like, you got a point. Like, it probably would have been better had he had like a regular alien dialect of some kind. But I thought it was a cool little. I love where they find places to stick these Star Wars fans that are actors and stuff. But that character in general, right? Like, just all about what the Empire does, even though it's so obvious to someone watching, that they're not good. But when you're not interacting a ton and only in these little spurts, like someone like Frick is, you kind of get where they're coming from. And then they really hammer that point home with Leia, right? Where it's like, one, Obi-Wan just not being trusting of anybody or anything, but kind of just tease her up to be like, I thought the Empire was good, like her dad is in the Senate, and obviously not everybody that is connected to the Empire is bad, but like to kind of have that shift in perspective and be like, Obi-Wan is like the lone person who realizes like the Empire came out of all of this terrible stuff that we saw in the prequels, but the rest of the people in the galaxy, which is quite large and obviously on the Outer Rim, they're seeing a group of people who stopped really bad things from happening, and now they're trying to put the galaxy back together. And I thought that was like one of the things, at least for me, that popped second time through, where I was like, we didn't get a ton of it, but you can see like the little bits of influence. And while maybe to someone on the Outer Rim it doesn't seem terrible, someone like Obi-Wan who's been around is like, this used to be like fields and there were things here, and now it's just whatever we've got.
Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic, right? I mean, Leia and Obi-Wan, we've talked about before, is a very interesting dynamic in that, like, he doesn't trust anybody. She trusts too much because she's a 10-year-old girl. She doesn't know any better. So that, like, that push and pull and, like, learning that she probably shouldn't trust as many people, and Obi-Wan has to be more open-minded, like, didn't trust that Tala was going to be there, and she was. But yeah, just seeing on screen the kind of effects that the Empire is having, it's something that's really addressed in like a lot of novelizations. And like Ahsoka, you're at the point where like the Empire comes into a planet, they kind of take over it, they destroy it for cropping, for farming, and then they're just like, well, you have what we needed, we got it, we don't care if your planet's destroyed, we did what we had to do, and now we're going to leave and we're going to let you all suffer. So like you see where the Empire is when they've already kind of like have their footing fully established, but to see the groundwork that is being laid, just a decade after we saw Revenge, like it's incredible. And like you kind of see Obi-Wan struggling with where he fit into that narrative, and like how he helped Palpatine and like was unknowing and like what they've become, and like he seems to struggle with that, which is also another layer to this show, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's one of those things where it's like, as we're expanding this universe, like these are the little things that I look for, especially in the shows that are connecting this much, right, to like the original material. Like I think when we have shows, that stray further out in the galaxy and tell stories that get away from the Skywalker saga, I think you can, that there's different places I think that you can go. But when you are tied to someone like Obi-Wan and so closely to, the last time we saw him, like it's little things like that that I really kind of dig about the show. Now, one of the other things that I've been seeing over the last 2 weeks, and it seems to get almost more and more each week, is Riva's character. Now, obviously, I've been a big fan from Jump. I kind of dig how she's got whatever it is that she's going after, and whether it's, herself kind of driving that need and desire to want to go and chase Obi-Wan, or if some sort of relationship with Vader is kind of pushing her to go do it. I dig that, like, she has lots of similarities to Anakin, like you said, either last week or the week before. It's all merging together at this point. But like, you see a lot of these qualities in Riva that as a viewer can be like, God, man, she's kind of irritating. But like, it's exactly like Anakin. And the thing that hit me watching it the second time after you had said that was like, it's also kind of like Ahsoka. And if it's a situation where maybe Vader is putting out kind of like he does directly, where it's like, hey, this chair is open, any one of you can fill it. Is he looking for a new Padawan? Is he looking for, that younger person who he can kind of confide in or be drawn to? And for me, I just see a lot of similarities in Riva's character, where it's like, oh yeah, all right, if there is some sort of past connection between these two, it makes sense why Anakin, of all of the Inquisitors, maybe is leaning toward Riva, because she kind of reminds me of Ahsoka. And it's one of those things where it's like, man, this was an animated show. You give it like 2.5 seasons, and I bet you she clicks, like,
Yeah.
He has a lot of those. I'm going to go on impulse. I don't care what the boss says. I know that if I do what my gut is telling me, it's going to work out. One of the things that we talked about last week, Anakin being a tactician, and a strategist. And while Riva might be going against, what her superiors are saying, or just acting on whims, when you look at the maneuvers that she's doing, she's very, very strategic. The way that she draws Obi-Wan out when she's on Dio, to even in this one, chasing down Leia, which, granted, in the moment, I got really thrown. I was like, how the hell did she get in front of Leia? Like, there's one tunnel, but my guess would be is that, the tunnel probably, being that doesn't go underground, right? It looks like it's kind of still on the same level as everything. Probably is a lot of winding and, getting you to wherever you go, where Riva, who is force sensitive, can feel something in the tunnels moving, whether she knows it's Leia or not, and realizes, oh, that's where the point is. It's probably a quick place for her to jump. But to this point, everything that we've seen, it seems like Riva's strategies are putting things in places where she should be able to succeed. And then someone like the Inquisitor steps in the way. Someone like Vader shows up. And, well, I guess the last one, like, she does succeed, right? She gets back to Leia. But like, I don't know. I'm digging the character, and in the things that could be annoying or rubbing people the wrong way, I'm like, well, I mean, God, if the shoe fits, right?
Yeah. I think, I think she does. Moses Ingram, I think, is incredible. And there's been a lot of discussion around her and her acting in this whole week, or even since the show premiered. And I will say, and I sent it to you, the Midnight Boys did like a great 30 minutes on the culture of Star Wars and like what's happening with Moses Ingram. So highly suggest listening to their latest Obi-Wan episode 3 reaction. But yeah, up until this point, we don't really know what her end goal is, right? Like why we know she wants Obi-Wan. we can guess that she's trying to get in the good graces of Vader or wants to impress Vader in some way, but we don't know why. We don't know like if she wants to be his second in command, if she's looking for some, if she thinks she's owed something, if it's confirmed that she was at the Jedi Temple and she was a youngling and like Obi-Wan slighted her, so she has her own, vendetta to settle. We don't know. We just know that she's hyper focused on Obi-Wan, similar to how Anakin is or Vader is. And I think you make a great point about Ahsoka and like how the first 2 seasons, everybody's like, she's really annoying. Who is it? Like, why do we need her? She wasn't even like, she's not even a part of, the prequel series, the prequel trilogy. And by the end, you're like, she's a badass. Give her her own show, which we have. So like, it's going to be interesting to see how these next 4 episodes play out, to see what she does. And she's they use her character as a great plot device to kind of move it forward, right? Like we had to get Obi-Wan off Tatooine. She got Obi-Wan off Tatooine. Had to let Obi-Wan know that Vader is Anakin. She did that for you. So just seeing how they're going to use her to kind of force these two together is going to be interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now I feel like we should maybe just talk about Vader and Obi-Wan like just a little bit before we get into this week's episode. And it's one of those things in the moment, I'm never thinking about this shit. I'm just like, holy shit, what is happening? Like Obi-Wan's being dragged through like all of these flames, like Vader, and clearly what he's been thinking or coming up with in his head, like we're seeing bits and pieces of it. And then like, you come back down to earth, you rewatch the episode, it doesn't really hit me, but then I'm very attached to social media. And it's like, a lot of people are on that whole fire sequence. Like, why isn't Obi-Wan burned up more? And I'm like, well, yes, there are large flames, but if you were dragging someone, say, I don't know, across hot coals, I wouldn't necessarily expect them to catch fire the way that Anakin does in, Revenge, but like you wouldn't expect their entire body to be caught on fire and it to look kind of more. And also, we can't see his side because his arm is down most of that shot anyway. But like Vader isn't dragging him through open flames. There are open flames around Obi, but he's dragging him through a section where there really aren't open flames. It's more hot coals. He is trying to create as much physical pain as possible and not do it in a way that's too fast or that could maybe kill him in the process. Like the reason he pushes it out of the fire and puts it all out is because he wants Obi-Wan to live and he wants Obi-Wan to suffer. So like, maybe some of the flames being really big around Obi-Wan kind of threw that off. But for me, like, I just sit there and like, well, if you watch where Vader's dragging him, not really flames. And like, he accomplishes what he's trying to do. Like, Obi-Wan is messed up, and he's messed up enough where his attacking arm, which would be his strong suit, is really damaged. And we watched Vader manhandle Obi-Wan with one hand through that entire sequence. And Anakin can feel it, like he's not the same guy he was 10 years ago. Obi has said it. I don't know. I feel like we could play a drinking game. How many times, just, every time Obi-Wan says, I'm not the guy I was 10 years ago, you take a shot. But like, it's clear that Anakin can sense that he's not the same guy, and he's kind of pushing him. I think Anakin is always known he was the one, right? Like as an adult, as a Jedi, he knows this is what my role is, and he always is out to kind of prove it or always be the best, right? And it's like, I even saw some people poking at like, oh man, like just that whole bit where like Vader's like whacking him like this, and it's like, yeah, but like think about Anakin's perspective. This dude has been thinking about this guy and what he took from him for 10 years. And now he's got it. He sees real quick that he could have dispatched him like he did those civilians. But
he's toying with them.
He wants Obi-Wan. He wants to be able to beat his master and show him like, hey, you know what? I am the better. And he wants not only just to torture him, but I think he's trying to lure Obi-Wan out in that first part of that sequence. And then when he realizes that there really isn't bringing him out, okay, well, now I'm going to catch you and torture you. I think it's going to be fun to see how Vader kind of changes. And like what his direction is or how he comes at Obi-Wan the next time. And if we get, like I had said last week, some sort of montage or something where we can see Obi-Wan kind of regain, like, 3 episodes left. I don't know how we're gonna heal him and get him back to like Jedi fighting shape, but like it'll be interesting to see if Vader can sense that the next time he runs into him, because like I think you said last week, it's probably likely that if we only get one more showdown, Obi-Wan probably ends up getting the upper hand, or at least enough in a way where we're going to be able to save Leia. He's going to be able to get out of Dodge. But I don't know. I was sitting there, and when I rewatched it, I was just like, man, like you can just feel the visceral nature to what Vader is trying to do. And like obviously showing fans the Vader that we've always heard about. But like, I don't know, it just all of his actions and how he's operating in this show just totally makes sense if you're thinking about it from Anakin's perspective.
Yeah, you see when we first, like when he's walking through the town and like causing chaos, killing, that young child, what he's capable of. And then so that sets you up with like, okay, well, we know what his powers are. So when you see him battling Obi-Wan, you're like, okay, well, he's pulling his punches, right? Like if he wanted to kill Obi-Wan already, he would have. We all know that doesn't happen. So it's clear that like I like your interpretation of he's trying to get a gauge, he's pushing him, he's like, you're not the master I knew 10 years ago. Anakin is also not the apprentice that he was 10 years ago. And just that dynamic too. We talked about dynamics with Leia and Obi-Wan, but like really pushing him, but also really toying with him because he's wanted to get this revenge for 10 years. And Anakin, we know, is vindictive. We saw what he did with the Tusken Raiders. He wants to get this revenge. He wants to draw it out, and he's going to toy with him. He's not going to be one and done. He's not only causing physical pain with fire, but like what he did, showing him that like, hey, I am pulling my punches. I am, and this is how much you're struggling. He's attacking him mentally too. So like he's down now 2 times. Or 2 times as much. And so now it's going to be like just that whole mental game too, and as well as physical. He has to physically get Jedi shape, and we talked about and joked about like a Rocky montage of him training, but also mentally, and that just like opening himself back up to the Force is going to be huge. And I think we're gonna get it, I'm sure, because he's gonna have to. And I know we talked about what we think is gonna wanting to talk about what we think is going to happen to episode 4, and I'm probably jumping a bit, but like right on cue. Clearly, episode 4 is Obi-Wan trying to get Leia back, and probably maybe with the help of Tala. I don't think Tala is a one and done character. So clearly, like something's got to happen. He's got to realize that like he can't go about just being a nobody anymore. He has to open himself back up. He has to brush it off and like really get back into what he was, maybe not 10 years ago, but at least close to it.
Yeah.
Because Leia matters to him now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one of those things where it's like, I was talking about like last week where the instinct is there, right? We see Obi almost fighting that instinct the whole episode, like, oh, I am in this situation where a droid figured out who I am. Instead of whipping out my lightsaber and killing all of the people that are around me, I'm going to use a blaster, which is something like we never see Obi-Wan use. And like, there's just that constant reluctance to, even to the point where he actually takes it out because he's going up against Anakin. Like he looks at it like, do I even know how to use this thing? And he runs and he avoids. And it's not until Vader goes, like, you can't run from me. Like right away, it's up and he's there. Like those instincts are in there. Because they are, right? It's like riding a bike. It's just everything that Obi-Wan has gone through from a mental standpoint, I think has kind of shut him down to that. Like you said, he has to allow himself to be open to the Force again, being willing to use the Force again. One of the other things that like we haven't really seen him do, we haven't really seen any Jedi mind tricks. How easy would it have been before those drones show up? Obi-Wan just doing one of these, like, where, no, like you're gonna let us pass. Like you don't see any of that from him. And even to the point where when he saves Leia in episode 2, like it's a literal life or death moment for him to just reach out, and he struggles to hold her
Mhm.
enough where he can't bring her to him. He can put her safely on the ground and then go run downstairs to her. So it will be interesting, I think, to see that this episode from Obi, and like how he not only physically gets back, but mentally, like I just like in the moment you're watching, you're like, Obi Wan is shook. Like
Yeah.
one, just from he still hasn't grasped the fact that Anakin's alive, and now he is seeing what he turned him into, and like not only is that heartbreaking to him as a brother, but as a general that led Jedi and the clones through all of these different wars with this guy. Like now I've created the thing that's making the world look like garbage. Um,
Yeah. You are what you made me, right?
yeah, like
Placing that blame strictly on Obi-Wan. Anakin takes none of the blame.
no, and like could you blame Anakin? Like if I was him, I'd be like, yeah, no, that damn Obi-Wan, man, like it's all his fault.
Yeah.
Um,
That's very in his character.
yes. Now the flip side to that is Vader this episode. What are we gonna get from him? How much do we get to see into what his strategy is, what connections he has with Riva? But I think even more important than anything is if you're thinking from a logical perspective, okay, Obi-Wan just got away, we're gonna go back and regroup. You'd have to assume that Riva is going to make some sort of contact with Vader, especially if she finds out that like Obi-Wan got away again, and be like, oh well, look at over here what I got. And
Mhm.
I'm sure if Bail Organa, right, is in the Senate, he must be aware that he probably has a daughter, and if the Grand Inquisitor knew that she kidnapped a senator's daughter, pretty sure Vader knows. So it'll be interesting to see where, like, logically, it would just be like you would imagine all three of them would cross paths at some point. But
Yeah.
you'd also imagine that Anakin would have some sort of a sense of Padme somewhere in there, and that could really mess with canon. So I'm really interested to see, like, does Vader go back to his castle back on Mustafar and to regroup, and does he only talk to her again through like digital communications, or do we have a physical interaction of some kind? I would assume that we probably are looking through like telecommunication of some kind, but I do hope that we see physical interaction between the two of them previously, whether it's seeing Anakin with the younglings, because I still think that little girl that we see at the beginning is her, or if we see some sort of maybe when she joins the Empire, where do the Inquisitors fall? That's one of the other things too, is like I think if you go in down that route, you could even get more into the Inquisitor storylines, which I think will also be something that will obviously get this episode where you'll see Kang Sung and the fourth sister. I don't know her name, but like I feel like you'll see the two of them with Riva having some sort of contact and communication, and how that I'll be interested to see how Vader messes with that infighting, if he does anymore, and how he utilizes that manipulation that he's so good at.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we got more of Hayden Christensen's face. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but like also they bring him back, right? They brought him back for a reason. It wasn't just to have a shot of him in the desert, which is something we didn't really touch on, but like Obi-Wan seeing him and like that kind of PTSD, and is that something because they're not connected? They've sensed each other. Is Anakin or is Vader like projecting that to him, messing with him again mentally? So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more Hayden Christensen in flashbacks, right? Like it's got to be in the contract somewhere. You have to see my face because this is his first like big introduction, really back into acting on a large platform.
Even though we know he's in the suit, like that, like that's
right.
Where it's so nice, where it's like Pedro Pascal, maybe in the suit, maybe like like the first thing that Ewan said in interviews, like, man, when I turned around in that fight scene and I see Vader and Hayden is standing there, it's like, oh yeah, he's in the suit. So like that's obvious. But no, like you want to see his face. And one of the other things, just to interject, that I had heard like some people talking about is like, is that in any sense Obi still sensing the good in Anakin? Like that's why he sees him that way. Like that interesting thing too. I think
because he doesn't know Anakin any better. Like he doesn't know Anakin in the form. He knew that he was burned. He knew that he cut his limbs off, but he doesn't know what form he's taken now. So like in his mind, Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, that's his last form. So it would make sense that that's how he would see him, and like we know he like has nightmares about him and stuff. So it wouldn't be. I'm agreeing with you. I don't think we're going to see him as much like physically, but maybe telecommunications or flashbacks. I think what makes Vader so scary as a whole, and probably one of the best villains of all time, is how little we really see of him, right? It's more of like the idea of him. And so I think they're going to be very judicious in how they use him, and how many battles they set up with Obi-Wan, because, and I think we know that Deborah Chow like really had a fight to get Vader a part of the series. And so like, yes, she wants to use him, but I don't think they're going to use him so much where we get to the point where like, okay, Vader's back. Like he's not really going to do anything. We know what happens. Um, it's more so again that mental mind game of like, we see him, we know he's there, he's looming. Mentally, that's going to mess up the audience. It's going to mess up Obi-Wan, but we don't necessarily have to see him. I could be wrong. We can get a ton of Vader, which wouldn't be a bad thing either, but it can go either way.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think we should wait anymore. I don't have anything else to talk about. Do you?
Nope.
No. So that's it. We've said everything that we have to say about episode 3. Yes, I know it's week 3 for episode 4, but you know how this thing goes. So we've said everything that we gotta say. Now we want to know what you guys are thinking. What stuff did we not talk about last week? What stuff did you miss and maybe catch on a second watch? What was really kind of pointing out or standing out to you when you were going back through episode 3? Stuff with the Empire, stuff with Reva, stuff with Vader, anything you got, man, good, bad, indifferent on Obi-Wan. Chapter 3, down below in the comments section. We look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old C-Man, anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer reactions, you want to be here with me and Britt, or talking Obi-Wan, you want to see our reactions to episode 4, which we're getting ready to watch, you haven't, you want to show a little love and support, well then, hey, you will come join C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. Simply by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, that's been my friend Britt. I've been the C-Man. We're signing off. Peace.
Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.